When you mess with the bats, the gloves come off. The purple gloves. Here's a look at the brand new McFarlane Toys DC Multiverse Detective Comics number 27, Batman. Batman has dedicated his life to an endless crusade, a war on all criminals in the name of his murdered parents who were taken from him when he was just a child. Since that tragic night, he has trained his body and his mind to near physical perfection to be a self-made superhero. He's developed an arsenal of technology that would put most armies to shame, and he's assembled teams of his fellow heroes like Justice League and the Outsiders. In the name of his murdered parents, Bruce Wayne wages eternal war on the criminals of Gotham City. He is vengeance. He is night. He is the Batman. Criminals think for 1 second they can bring crime to a city. They'll find out real fast Batman's going to throw a wrench in their plans. A blue wrench. Before, of course, we get a closer look at Detective Comics number 27, Batman. I don't have myself a big giant spotlight to shine in the sky, so I'll have to do something a little bit more simpler and a little bit more cost-effective. I'd like to send out, if I can, a thank you to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample we could have a look at. He's a big boy. This Batman's actually using the Hush Batman body. I'll bring it in a second for comparison's sake. Because of that, he's actually 7¼ inches in height, or this Batman is 19 centimeters tall. So, yeah, he's actually using the Batman Hush body, short of, again, just changing the cape. Actually, one that's really nice about the new Detective Comics number 27 Batman is that they're actually using a wire-framed fabric cape. I'm going to talk more about that in a moment. Other than that, though, it seems to be the case that they are using the same bodies. It doesn't look right away that they are, but then if you look really close at like his abdomen area, there's still, of course, the stretched out sections of his fabric. They're just a little bit more washed out or a little bit more painted over. For a second, it doesn't quite look like they're using the same bodies. But torsos, arms, and lower legs seem to be shared between the two figures. Other Batmans, of course, we can also bring in as well. My one real complaint right away out the gates, you already have a complaint, is that I do feel like Batman is a little too big, especially for this being Detective Comics number 27. Batman wasn't a big buff Batman back then. No, he was actually a little bit more of a leaner body. I think he could have probably worked a little bit better maybe using the Nightfall Batman, or at the very least, one of my favorite Batmans, the Batman from Zur-En-Arrh. A nice looking Batman's though, but again, like I just think maybe if anything, if I can actually get Batman Zur-En-Arrh to stand, there we go. I just think if maybe anything, the Batman First Appearance Batman might be just a little bit too big. To help jog your memory as to which issue this Batman appears in, the friendly folks at McFarlane Toys do include a trading card that does have actually the first appearance of Batman here on the front from Detective Comics number 27, far back as May 1939. I may joke from time to time that the person behind the camera is old. I'm not 1939 old. On the back, I would have normally criticized the type of read-up that they use because it's a very generic Batman read-up. We've gotten this read-up lots of times. Although with the source material being as it is, I think this kind of read-up is perfect for this type of Batman. You can also, of course, pause and read this for yourself. If it's too hefty of a read, don't worry, I did read this at the beginning of this review as well. Nice looking card. We're going to move it off to the side. Not much new here. I mean, the figure comes included as well with a display stand. Would have liked if they could have done something different to the display stand, just being that this is the first appearance of Batman. But still, the fact we get ourselves a display stand, and with this particular body being prone of plaguing with problems down the road with loose ankles, I probably have now like 5 of these Batman bodies. They usually are good, except for like the ankles. Batman on this one, luckily, has still got good tight ankles, but definitely hold on to this display stands. These are good really for displaying the figures as well. May look for a second like he's actually pillaged something from the Riddler, but Batman comes included with a pair of purple gloves. Actually, he comes with 6 pairs of purple gloves. I keep thinking he had blue gloves in the first appearance. Sure enough, though, purple. The hands themselves, first of all, he comes with closed fists that are already attached onto the ends of his forearms. If you prefer, though, relaxed hands. I don't know if I really like these relaxed hands. The fingers seem short. I don't know. Is it just me? They also look more like gloves that Batman's already taken off, put inside his glove compartment of the Batmobile, as there doesn't seem to be as much definition to the actual fingers. The fingers seem like they're a little bit shorter, but he comes included with a pair of relaxed hands. More preferred these hands instead, these very overly aggressive hands. Look at these things. Now, I think these are also not only just there for posing, but the figure also is good to then hold his accessory using these provided hands. He comes included with a blue wrench. It looks to be at least an adjustable wrench. Very brightly colored, as equally bright as the purple gloves. The thing about it, though, is if you try to put these in his hands, because obviously you're not going to be able to use these hands aren't going to be holding anything. These weirdly hold on to the wrench. You sort of have to tuck it in between the last two fingers, and he sort of holds it in a way like it doesn't look like he's actually even holding it. Unless the plan is actually for him to kind of hold the wrench, more of just disgust that a criminal is swinging it at him. Because if you hold it this way, it doesn't look like it's right. You could also, of course, put it in between his fingers, but then it looks like he's supposed to be holding more of a syringe than an actual wrench. It just doesn't make any sense to me. To change out the hands, though, from the hands that he has right now, just hold on to the forearms and just wiggle off these from the post. And then take, of course, your hand that you want to use and just plug it in place. I don't mind these hands, but again, I think if to have Batman holding a wrench, give him a pair of gripping hands, because these hands just don't look like they're designed to hold a wrench. I'll stop talking about the wrench, don't worry. We'll move that off to the side, getting a closer look now at Batman. Because, of course, he's also using the Hush Batman body. It means that, first of all, he's really big in the body and the torso and the arms and the lower legs. But also, this Batman is also using a neck and a head as one piece. Instead of having independent articulation here for the top of the head, and then the neck being a separate piece, the neck and the head come together as one. It's not a bad look, but of course, if you are one that prefers some separate articulation, you might be a little bit disappointed by the fact that this Batman head doesn't move independently from the rest of his neck. It's a good-looking head sculpt for what it is. Batman back in the day would have had a much wider-looking points on the tops of his cowl. They were a lot longer as well, something that we might get a little bit in the Christian Bale Batman from Batman Begins. The face is good, a little on the paler side when it comes to his lower mouth here, for example. But overall, a nice-looking head sculpt. I like the colors. I really like the colors of the blue that they chose here for his Batman body. The emblem, obviously, in this case, is much smaller as Batman first is developing his costume. It gets a lot bigger, of course, as he progresses over the years. I like the size of it. I think, if anything, it might have been maybe just needing to be a little bit bigger. Not that you can really look at the card and have that be an idea as to how big the emblem should be, because Batman's obviously blocking his emblem with the head sculpt, or the head there of the criminal. I think maybe just by using this body. Now, if they were, say, for example, using the Nightfall body, I think having the emblem this size would have worked fine. But because you're already using a bigger body to start off with, I think maybe making the emblem just a little bit bigger might have helped just a little bit as well. Of course, he does have the purple gloves. Almost had a hard time getting that out. And he also had himself a very bright utility belt. That isn't quite the norm when it comes to utility belts, just made of many different little compartment spaces and a circular ring there on the front instead of rectangular belt buckle. Still has the trunks down below here. These are softer plastic. Of course, the lower legs are just the same as any other of the Hush Batman bodies. So again, show you guys the boots between the two. Exactly the same legs, same lower abdomen area. Other than, again, like this one would have had, this actually also would have had the sculpted emblem. So they probably would have had to maybe take, I would imagine, even had the original mold, and then they just have the bare buck mold. And then they, instead of actually molding an emblem over top of it, they just printed on the emblem instead. One thing also about this Batman, you probably have already noticed for yourself, is the fact he does have a real fabric cape. I like the look of this cape. And it's funny, though, that at the time I'm doing this video, I just finished doing the review of Cassandra Cain Batgirl. You may have already seen that review. The material isn't quite the same. This is actually a little bit more of a shinier finish to it. It also does have, of course, the wireframe. So, of course, you can bring this one out if you want to have Batman more in a wide, fanned-out cape. You can also pose that off very nicely. And also, too, you can wrap this cape around because, of course, he has a wire here all the way at the bottom of the cape. Well, it's not quite at the bottom because the points at the bottom of the cape are a little bit longer than the ones on the side. I like the material, though. I actually do really like the material. And I think that by using a fabric cape, it gives Batman also a little bit more, something more that you can actually do with it as opposed to just being molded. Like, if just to look at this one versus the original Batman, I don't know if this is the original one. I think this is the original one. This cape obviously would have just used a plastic molded cape. It looks good on certain figures, but I think for the first appearance of Batman, it's perfect that they chose to use a cloth cape instead of plastic. Of course, the articulation is going to be exactly the same on this Batman, so if you already have any of those Batman Hush bodies, you already know the territory that we're about to cover. So unfortunately, he does lose a little bit here, omitting one point of articulation in favor of having the head attaching onto the neck. I know it's not everyone's cup of tea. Some people don't really like the idea that they chose a head and a neck as one piece. But again, like, it gives you at least, if anything, a seamless look between the head and the neck. Head does rotate all the way around. It does look up. Only by a little bit, looks down quite a lot more, and you can also rock it back and forth as well. Even though he does have the cape, and because the wireframe, I mean, you can bring the cape obviously back as well if you wanted it. If you think it's too far forward of a cape, you just easily tuck it back and behind him. That's the benefit of having a little bit of manipulation here on the actual cape itself. But the arms do rotate all the way around. There's nothing hindered really there at all, even if the cape was in the way. You bring those arms at 90 degrees. There's also as well the swivel joint here, there in the bicep. Double hinge on the elbow as always, and the hands do rotate all the way around. Upper torso for body of the Batman is obviously on a ball joint. You got the ball joint down below here, just behind the utility belt. And then he also has the ratchet joints once again. It's always satisfying, isn't it? It's like opening up a lobster shell. Weird comparison. But he does have the ratchet joints there on either one of his thighs, both of his thighs. He also has a little bit of a swivel there at the top of the thigh, double hinge on the knee, and no articulation for the boot. The boot's just a continued sculpt from the rest of his calf. He does also have the ankle pivot here, back and forth, and toe articulation as well. The only thing that is loose on this figure, and I knew that something was going to be loose because they're using the same bodies again and again, is that unfortunately the knees on this Batman are developing a little bit of looseness. You can see like how easy it is for me to move the lower end of his knee. I hope that's not going to worsen over time because it's a really nice looking Batman. I'm finally glad to see that we did get ourselves a first appearance of Batman. Although, admittingly, maybe the size of the body that they ended up going with, I think maybe is just a little bit too big. Because, again, like this is the first appearance of Batman. I mean, even just to look at the card kind of gives you at least an idea that this Bruce isn't hitting the gym as much as he does later on in his years. I think maybe, if anything, not that obviously, I'm always a mark when it comes to the Nightfall Batman. But if they maybe had used the body for the Nightfall Batman and just tweaked a head sculpt, of course, to fit then the frame of him, I think it may have worked a little bit better because of this being the first appearance of Batman. His earlier years of fighting crime, I think still he's a little bit too big. Like this figure? Yeah, me too. Want to see this figure again. In fact, actually, this first appearance of Batman from issue number 27 of Detective Comics is also getting a McFarlane Platinum Edition, which is going to now swap out the purple gloves in favor of lighter blue, and it's also getting him a little bit of highlights, not only in the top of his cowl, but also in his boots as well. We will be looking at that figure in an upcoming review, but we're going to obviously pull it back a bit to go back to this Batman. Some of the things I really like about this is the colors that they went with. Maybe if the body is a little too big on my feelings at least, I think they at least chose some proper colors for his first appearance. I also really like the fabric cape. I did in the review of the Cassandra Cain Batgirl state that maybe like using fabric capes should be done sparingly and do it with purpose and give it to the characters that suit it, I think, having fabric capes. Don't just start to throw it in willy-nilly to every figure that's coming out in DC Multiverse, because we already have figures that have really nice plastic capes. But save it, set it aside and save it for characters that have value in them. And I think first appearance of Batman definitely is a contender for why I feel like a character like this works really well with a fabric cape, rather than had they used a plastic cape instead. Overlooking, of course, the obvious problems of having the figure just being overly big like this, I'm really happy with how this one turned out. I'm super excited to also have a look at the McFarlane Platinum Edition version of this Batman, which is going to slightly tweak the colors just a little bit. Have you guys had the chance yet to pick up the Detective Comics number 27 Batman? If you haven't, based on this review, is this a figure you guys could see yourselves grabbing? Big thank you once again to the folks over at McFarlane Toys that did provide this sample of Detective Comics number 27, dated as far back as 1939. How many, just a show of hands, how many people in this chat, how many people watching these videos were around in 1939? Anybody? Anybody? I don't think there's going to be anybody. Certainly, I do hope that the rest of you guys that were born a little later than this will be certainly sticking around as we have a look at not only the McFarlane Platinum Edition version of First Appearance of Batman, but also as well some other DC Multiverse reviews that are all coming your way in the pipeline. In the meantime, though, if you guys did enjoy this video, I want to throw it a like. If you guys are loving the content that you guys are seeing and you're on board to see more, make sure you hit that subscribe button down below and you're turning on the bell notification. As always, guys, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.